we will start off with some basic stuff on GAM, but then we will definitely move on to some more advanced use cases. So hopefully something for everyone in this presentation today. And some live demos coming up as well. So let's get into this. So there's a few options for automation on Google Workspace. So of course you can automate things like user creation in the admin console, and you also have the investigation tool and activity rules to automate certain things in there, but that's a bit limited. We also have access to Google APIs, and there's a couple of ways of accessing APIs easily. One is GAM, which we'll go into more in a second. The other one is AppScript. So you can use AppScript to also fairly easily integrate with Google APIs, but that does take some coding knowledge. But a real strength of GAM here is you can just do it via the command line. So why do schools love GAM? Well, you can automate bulk operations. So very useful for bulk creating users, updating users, groups, getting classroom information, and so on. Things which can be hard to find in the admin console as well. You can, as I mentioned earlier, GAM is essentially a wrapper for Google's APIs. It makes interacting with those APIs much easier. And what we'll highlight today particularly is how you can install GAM into your Google Cloud Shell, which is a cloud-based Linux machine that every Google Workspace admin has free access to, and it's our recommended place to install GAM. There are actually two versions of GAM. There's the original version created by Jay Lee, which started off GAM, and that was taken and developed into GAM Advanced, which added a lot more access to additional Google APIs. It's fully backwards compatible, and I'm sure you agree with me, Charlie. We always recommend just going straight to GAM Advanced because it will do everything the original version can do, plus a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Peter.
In terms of installing and setting up GAM, there are a couple of ways of going about this. So the first way, the traditional way, is to download GAM onto your desktop or onto your Cloud Shell, which is what we recommend. And then you need to create a new API project. And this is just a way of identifying your install to GAM. Once you've got that API project set up on Google Cloud Platform, you then need to authorize GAM to work with Google Workspace to be able to add things like users and create groups. But some GAM commands will also require something called domain rights delegation. And this is a way for GAM to essentially impersonate other users on the domain, which is important when wanting to manage things such as Google Drive files on behalf of a user or certain other actions within Gmail. So that can be really important depending on what you're doing. Now, another way to install GAM is to use a delegated admin service account. So essentially, this is using a service account on Google Cloud Platform, but adding it to one of your pre-existing or a new custom admin role in your admin console. So the advantage of this, well, there's a few advantages. It is a little bit more secure, and it also gives you a bit more control. So if you have members of your team who may not be super admins, but you do want them to have some access to GAM, then this could be a good solution for that, because with this, you're creating your own custom admin role, okay, and you're selecting the specific privileges you want them to have, and you can also scope that down to particular OUs as well. It just gives you a bit more control. It's a bit easier than managing the API scopes in Google Cloud Platform as well. Charlie, did you have anything else to add there on advantages about why schools might want to consider this approach?
Well, I would just add to that, if you're using GAM Advanced, another great advantage of it is beyond GAM itself. On Taser's GitHub page, there's also GAM scripts that extend the functionality of GAM. So if you have that and you combine that with having your service account, there's more things that you can do. So yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And yeah, do check out that resource. Saying that, there are some disadvantages to this method, so it may not be the right solution for all. There's no way of using this with full super admin privileges, so it is only for kind of delegated admin privileges. There's some things which only super admins can do and which can only be done with domain-wide delegation as well. So it does give you a more limited subset of GAM commands which you can run. And it is still experimental. It's a fairly new feature, so just keep that in mind as well. So earlier we mentioned about installing GAM into Google Cloud Shell. It's the method which both Charlie and I recommend. It's the most secure place to install this because you've got all the protections then of Google Cloud and your Google Workspace account. So it's protected by your two-step verification, which you've hopefully set up on your super admin account, and it just means you can access it from anywhere as well. So anywhere you've got a web browser, you can securely sign in and access your GAM console. And Charlie's created this brilliant video, so if you've never set up GAM in Cloud Shell before, then do watch back this video. We'll share this presentation after this call. So yeah, full details about how to configure out there, and we've got a link here to where you can learn more about that install process as well. And these are just some of the services which you can use GAM to manage. So you can manage things like users, of course, but you can also create and manage Google Groups, items, and Google Calendar. For instance, yesterday I was just helping a school with Google Calendar. Someone had deleted a calendar in the school. So I used the investigation tool to get back all of the recently created events into a Google Sheet, and then use a GAM script to recreate all those calendar events. So you can manage Google Calendar. You can use it to manage Google Docs, so reporting on what Drive items or docs are there. You can also use it to manage permissions to docs as well. You can use it to manage Gmail, so looking at Gmail messages. You can use it to manage things like signatures and delegate access in Gmail, Google Groups, and a big one here, Google Classroom. So in the admin console, you don't get an awful lot of visibility to Google Classroom. So this is where GAM can be very powerful. If you want to report on what classes a teacher might be a member of, then you can use GAM to do that. Or you could even use GAM to automate your Google Classroom creation as well. So when it comes to accessing GAM, let's have a look at what that looks like in the Google Cloud Console. So you can get to the Cloud Console by going to console.cloud.google.com. And once you get there, to open up your Cloud Shell where you're going to install GAM, you can use this icon at the top right here, the little command line icon. That opens up Cloud Shell, which we can also pop out into a new window. So let me switch over that now just to make that a bit clearer. So I'm not going to go through the GAM setup process now. It would take a bit too much time on this call, and there's quite a few hoops to jump through, but do watch Charlie's video. It's fully documented in there on how to do that. But once you've got GAM set up, you can check it's configured and set up properly by typing in GAM version. That will tell you your version number of GAM. And then if you type in GAM info domain, I always run this first of all, and it'll just give me some high level information about my domain. And it just makes sure that GAM is functioning. And then you can start using some simple GAM commands. So for instance, a very simple command we could use is just to create a new user. So if we type in GAM, create user, and then give it a username. So let's just make up a username here and type in my domain. And hit enter, it will go and create that user for me. I can also use it to update that user. So I've created a user, but it's just put it at the top level of my admin console. So if we change this to update the user, and then we can supply another argument here. So let's change the org unit path into, let's put it in our students OU. Let's put this in double quotes as well, where we're using a slash there. and that should move it into my students OU for me. We can do exactly the same thing with groups as well. So I could create a group called test group. Let's perhaps if I can type there, so create group, test group, hit enter, and it will create that group for me. And just the same way, I can also then go back and delete that group as well. So that's pretty useful, doing things via the command line. But where it gets really powerful is when you can turn these into a bulk update command or a bulk creation command and use data you've got in a Google Sheet, for instance. So there's a couple of ways of going about this. So I've got a sheet over here with lots of users. So one way of doing this is I could download this sheet. I could then, download this as a CSV file. Then if I go back into my Cloud Shell, I can go here, and if I go onto the More menu, the three dots menu here, I can go into here and hit Upload, and then choose that file, upload it from my local machine into my Cloud Shell. So then if I type in ls, I can see here's the file I've just uploaded, the training users file. And then I can use that CSV file with GAM. So I could just simply type in GAM CSV, then reference the file. And then if I type in the GAM command I wanted to run for each row in that file, then I can just type in GAM create user. And the first thing we need to do is give it the username. So if we go back and check the file over here, the usernames are stored in the email column. So we can use these column headers as references in GAM. And to do that, we just need to supply a tilde in front of that, then paste in the column name, and then we can go and create those users. But let's provide a few other arguments as well. So let's provide the first name. Let's just check how we're storing this. So let's go back to here, grab the first name and paste that in as well. Let's do the same for last name. Which I think was named last name, like that. And let's give these new users a password as well. So let's set that to go Google One. And now if we hit enter, it's going to go through and get all the rows from our Google Sheet and go through line by line and create those users, run that GAM command we specified. So that's one option there. Another option is actually you don't have to download that Google Sheet at all. So let me just go and paste this command in and show you another example. So instead of actually downloading the sheet, we can actually use GAM to go and get that sheet for us. So here, it's a very similar command line, but instead of referencing a local file in GAM, we're actually using GAM to go and get the Google Sheet from my Google account. We're giving it a sheet ID and a sheet name, and then we're referencing the sheet that way. So it's just another way you can get access to your Google Sheets without having to go through the process of downloading and uploading to GAM. So a couple of very quick examples here. Now, Charlie and I just got a few more examples here, which we're going to go through just to give you a flavor for the types of other things you can do with GAM, which you might not already know about. So let me use my highlighter here. So this is just what we've done. We created some users using CSV and put them into a particular OU. You can also use GAM to retrieve information as well. So this command here is printing users who are in a particular OU we want to specify. But once you start using this, so you're retrieving a list of users, then you can start combining it with other GAM commands. So for instance, in this one, we're printing a list of users from our suspended users OU or another OU, and then we're telling GAM to update those users, move them into a different OU, and also hide them in a directory. So very quickly, you can start combining these commands and creating something which saves you, hopefully, a lot of time. So let's go on to the next slide now. So here we've got some examples of how to manage Google Groups with GAM as well. So just creating a simple Google group is very straightforward. You can also use it to retrieve information about your Google Groups. So this one will just print the members of a particular group, and we're adding this on to the end. So to drive means it will export those users, or it will export those group members to a Google Sheet in your Drive as well. Let me share another example of how we can use that with Google Classroom. So on this domain, we've got some Google Classroom users. So I could use GAM, for instance, to, so if we type in GAM, print courses for students are Weasley, it will give me a list of all the courses the students in. But if I just add to Drive onto the end, rather than giving me a very hard to read list there, it will instead get all the courses and then put that information into a Google Sheet for me, where I can go and view that much more easily. So going back to Google Groups, we can also use GAM to add members to groups as well. And of course, automate Google Group creation using a CSV file or a file in your Google Drive. As I mentioned earlier, GAM is really useful for managing Google Classroom, which you don't really get much control of in the admin console. So you can use GAM to do things like create courses using a command like this. You can use it to bulk update courses as well. You can use it to sync users from groups into a course as well. So that's a good way of automating your course membership on Google Classroom. As if you have groups already existing for your classes or courses, then you can just sync those over to Google Classroom. Gmail, we've got a few examples here, which again we'll share this presentation after today. But a few things you can do in Gmail is managing things like delegate access. You can also use it to manage signatures as well. So if you've got a signature stored as an HTML file, you can use GAM to automatically push that out to your users. And licensing is another useful area for GAM. So licensing in the admin console, it's very easy to assign licenses, but when it comes to removing licenses, especially from suspended users, you can't do that automatically. But using GAM, you could use a command like this one. Let's just highlight this to get all the users in a particular OU, and then if they are suspended, so we're using this to just search for suspended users, then we're going to run a GAM command to delete their license. And last example here is GAM is also very useful for managing Chrome devices, particularly when it comes to moving Chromebooks around within your admin console, or also doing things like offboarding old Chromebooks. You can use GAM to bulk deprovision and remove Chromebooks from your admin console as well, or you can use it to update Chromebook information on your admin console. So just a few examples there. Charlie, can you think of any other ways you've used GAM recently which has saved you, which others might be interested in knowing?
Crikey, it's a tough question, because it's one of those things that you use all the time in a variety of different ways. Certainly a bulk updating, renaming users is something I've been doing ready for the start of the new session, and GAM's been absolutely essential in doing that, and moving some users around in different OUs and such. So just those kind of operations is great. And the way that you showed it there, Peter, but the way that you can chain GAM commands together, so the output from one GAM command can be this kind of input for doing a bulk GAM command the next time, so you can chain things together, is really useful. Yeah, just so many different ways that you can use it. It's a fantastic tool.
Yeah, good one just came up. Somebody asked if you can use GAM to move files. They wanted to move files from somebody's personal drive into shared drive, and you can actually do that with a couple of structured GAM commands as well. That one came up recently.
Yeah, it's a great example, actually, managing shared drives and files, moving those around. Yeah, great example.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've worked with, because you can actually take GAM scripts and build your own script using GAM with multiple commands in it, and you can use that then to, for example, take staff files out of drives and move them into a shared drive or into another location. So there's some interesting things you can do there in terms of bulk management.
Actually, Nate had a good suggestion in the chat. You can use it to change primary teacher on Classroom without those invites and acceptance.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. Yeah, so yeah, normally when you invite someone into a class, whether it's a teacher or student, they get an email about GAM, you skip that whole process and they just get added into that class straight away.
Peter, I just want to jump in at this point just to add, I put this in the chat earlier, but we have our remote admin support and training deals. We support a couple of people in this community. I think Nate as well, we've just started working with on this. And one of the things we can help you with is GAM. So we can help you with writing GAM commands. We can help training your team on GAM. And the real benefit is you get direct access to Peter and Charlie. You're not getting, fobbed off to a junior person. You're getting the real experts. So if this is something you're interested in, please get in touch. And even if you just want some specific training, we can potentially just customize. If you want some custom training on GAM, we can do that. But we find the most effective way for you, for schools, is to have an ongoing relationship where we train you ongoing and we support you ongoing. So if you'd like to learn more about this, please message Katarina and we can send you some information.